right, we're going to be looking at language in our TV environment. We have one fantastic TV series that has come to an end, which is Muvhango, South Africa's pioneering family drama series, which centered one of South Africa's official languages, Tshivenda, which stood very much for a long time as a marginalized language. Bringing Tshivenda is something that this drama did. Muvhango, it exposed its cultures, its narratives, and also brought it into the mainstream in national television. At a time when most vernacular dramas favored more dominant languages, Muvhango offered representation, and it weaved in also the culture of the Vendas within its storytelling. After a long run, 28 years, the final episode aired on the 8th of August 2025. We talk about how shows like Muvhango, with Tshivenda at its core, challenge linguistic marginalization, and we also zoom into the challenges and breakthroughs in giving minority languages airtime. To help us on this one, Dr. Yanga Majola joins us, a sociolinguistic and academic manager at the Faculty of Humanities within Tshwane University of Technology. Dr. Majola, welcome on the show.
Good morning and welcome, Benjamin, and thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about this. Dr. Yanga, language on TV, in our music, is it important to have diversity?
I think it's very important. Fortunately, this week I'm attending the inaugural conference of the Linguistic Society of South Africa at Beachwood Hotel and War Tambo Conference Center in Boksburg. And we are discussing things like what you have just now mentioned here, the issue of linguistic rights, the issue of language marginalization, and so on. So I think in a country like ours, it is important to acknowledge the diversity, linguistic diversity that we have. In terms of our statistics, we've got 12 official languages, including South African Sign Language. And 9 of these languages are mostly indigenous languages. This includes Tshivenda. But in terms of the numbers, Tshivenda is the second lowest in terms of statistics. It is spoken by 1.4 million, and number one is Afrikaans, spoken by 6.3 million speakers in South Africa. So it is important for us to understand that the inclusion and diversity in these languages is going to help even languages like Tshivenda to be able to be accommodated in spaces such as television, such as in music, and the likes.
Dr. Majola, a language is not just a sound, it is a people. And here in the African context, a language, goes hand in hand with a people, its culture, its traditions, their way of life, and how they've interacted with the past, the present, and the future. And there was a time here in South Africa where if you were to say nda or a, which is part of the Tshivenda greetings, nobody would understand. But it is the series of Muvhango that brought people into the world of richness and culture. Let's speak about that a little bit. When a language is marginalized, how does that impact us knowing about its cultures, those people and their traditions?
You are very correct. I am from a small town called Umzimkhulu, former Transkei, later Eastern Cape, and now KwaZulu-Natal. I didn't know Tshivenda. Actually, the first Tshivenda speaking person was my first roommate when I got to university at around 2009. I hadn't known Tshivenda, but the only thing I knew about Tshivenda was what I saw on Muvhango. And this is the case with all my family members and other people who are from the Nguni language group. And exactly as you have correctly put it, some of the greetings in Tshivenda, the different greetings in Tshivenda that we have for the morning, for the afternoon, for the evening, we learned through Muvhango. But we also learned about the importance and the respect of the Venda, the people of who speak Tshivenda. How they do the I don't know what it's called, but how they would sort of like bow down, the ladies, when they see and respect a person of a high stature. This would not have been possible had it not been for programs like Muvhango. you've got so many people now that would say to you that, look, I don't know Tshivenda, or I've not had an opportunity to learn Tshivenda, but I was able to learn a little about it through Muvhango, particularly because there are subtitles. And those people appreciated that a language that is, I would regard as marginalized, because of the statistics that I gave, that it is at the top, at the bottom in terms of the number of people that speak it. So Muvhango played that crucial role in terms of ensuring that people learn about their culture, they learn about their language, and they actually put that language on the map.
Mm-hmm. It's all about money, right? And you spoke about the fact that, the Venda people are only 1 point something million here in South Africa. So to invest in such a show would be a bit of a risk, right? But Muvhango broke a lot of records because people outside of the Venda culture started watching Muvhango, and it kind of worked against the recipe, because one would have assumed that it's only the vendors that were going to watch that particular soapy. What's your take around the exposure of minority language versus the concept of saying, is this going to make me money?
I think we cannot bring money when we want to talk about people's cultures, people's livelihoods, people's languages. And I think this is part of why some of our African languages today are not used, are not what we would call intellectualized. That means used for business, used in economy, for banking, in technology, and so on. This is exactly the mentality that, look, there's no money for that. But this does not appreciate the sociolinguistic realities on the ground. That means that this is the languages that people speak on the ground. These are the languages that people use on the ground. The Constitution of South Africa acknowledges 12 official languages, and Tshivenda is one of them. It actually does not recognize it in any hierarchy or in any order, but it is recognized equal to English, equal to isiZulu. So it is actually a misnomer that you would have people saying that we can be able to develop English, we can develop isiZulu, but we cannot develop Tshivenda. One interesting fact that we heard from Ndade Lekota yesterday, who was one of the panelists in our conference, the former statistician general, he said something interesting about Venda when he gave statistics about people with the most degrees in South Africa. Mm-hmm. And he said to us that after English and Afrikaans, it's Venda that follow, which means that the Venda, they may be few in number, but they actually have an impact in the education system of our country, as opposed to the other languages, therefore. And the last thing that I want to touch on that is on that point, if you look at the news bulletin that we have, and this was alluded by Ms. Patty Swama-Hopeni, who is executive director at Press Council of South Africa. Yeah. She indicated that when you look at Tshivenda news, first of all, it is at 5:30. This is the time where people are traveling from work. Mm-hmm. They are not sitting on the news. But if you look at the Nguni news, they play 7 days a week, and they play at 7:30 or 7, when people are actually sitting and listening. Okay. Tshivenda on the other side.
Dr. Majola, I need to stop you there for now. And I know there's so many examples that can be used to show how marginalized this particular language is. We need to take a short break, and we'll continue to have this chat with you after this. Stay with us. We're speaking about marginalized languages on the African continent, using a perfect example of a TV series that has brought the language of Tshivenda to the forefront.
On the Move, weekdays, 9 a.m. to midday. Only on Channel Africa. #On the Move.
In this episode of Channel Africa Conversations, Peter talks to Dr. Thulisile Buda,
an academic,
author, and an expert in indigenous knowledge systems. Join us for a compelling discussion on preserving African languages and traditions in the digital era. Dr. Tulisile unpacks the role of educators, explorers, and how technologies like AI can support cultural preservation, and challenges us to rethink how we honor African heritage. You can find the episode on YouTube, SABC Plus, and on our website, channelafrica.co.za. This episode is a must-listen for educators, creators, and change makers across the continent. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Palesa and Benjamin fuel your day with fresh African perspective on Channel Africa.
This is a truly fascinating conversation that we'll continue with Dr. Yanga Majola, sociolinguistic and academic manager for the Faculty of Humanities at the Tshwane University of Technology, speaking about how a South African TV series, Muvhango, pioneered bringing to the forefront a very, very marginalized language of Tshivenda here in South Africa. And we're zooming into those challenges of linguistic marginalization in our communities, in our countries, but how, the likes of TV can really change that and help to break through some of those challenges. Thank you for staying with us, Dr. Majola. Let's talk a little bit about how, how a language is received from people through media. I mean, this is not just about our interaction every day with one another on the street, but media has a really, really strong input in how we view languages, how we view people, and how we view their cultures.
Yes, that's correct, Palesa. I think if you look at some of these programs, your telenovelas, your drama series on our television today, you'll realize that they try to tell the stories of the people of South Africa. It's stories about real people, it's stories about real life, and language is at the center of that. So Muvhango is one of those. That is actually, for me, it had shown a lot about the Venda, that no book has been written about that. And actually, if you read a book, it would be so difficult for that to reach everybody. But if you look at the dramas and the telenovelas that we have, it's so easy to reach everybody because that is readily available on SABC, where it was aired. And so it becomes very easy for everybody to access. There's no subscriptions that are needed. People can just be able to access that. So media plays that important role in bringing the real live stories of the people of South Africa, their language, their culture, how they do things, and how they relate with each other, their history. So this show for 28 years has been able to do that and has been consistent. And one of the things about Muvhango that stood out for me was how they were so respectful to the culture of the Venda throughout for the past 28 years consistently, and they ensured that they give us a sense of what happens in Venda.
Now let's speak about some of the other marginalized languages in South Africa. And these are only examples because we're using our own context. But all across the African continent, there are an array of languages. There'll be a few that we know of, but there's so many languages and sub-languages under our languages. There's a lot of richness in culture and language here on the continent. How is giving airtime to a particular language, bringing forth its people, bringing forth its traditions and its culture? Why is that important to give minority languages airtime?
I think that it is very important because it gives the speakers of that language a sense of belonging in South Africa. In South Africa, where we say that we've got 12 official languages that are supposed to be equal. So once you begin to give some of the marginalized languages, I'll give an example of Xitsonga, for instance. Isindebele, for instance, Siswati, for instance, and Setswana, you have very few dedicated dramas or soaps that are in these languages. And in the media space, if you talk in the context of media, that is one form of marginalization. You are denying these people a sense of belonging. You are saying to them, it is only important to see Xhosa shows, it is important to see isiZulu shows at the expense of these people. And at times you use money to say that it's money that is at the center. I think that we need a revolution, a linguistic revolution, that we should be able to say if all languages are equal, they must all be given enough airtime and equal airtime for the sake of its people, and for the sake of the preservation of those languages.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And earlier on, you made an example just before the break around airtime. You were speaking about certain languages and where the news are placed of those languages. People are still not at home to see those bulletins, maybe. Your thoughts around where we position also these languages, because I think there's an opportunity here whereby you can place a minority language in a very popular slot, because you know that another show would work just because it is the dominating language, so you can put it on a different slot. I don't think we experiment enough when it comes to where we place these wonderful minority languages in our programming.
Actually, one of our panelists yesterday, Councillor Karabo Mohale from ICASA, made an example of exactly what you're talking about and said that there's actually no need to give people slots. And she made an example that English and Afrikaans news play throughout the day, and there's no problem about that. But this is the same news that could play in other languages. It's just a matter of slotting them. So I think, we're denying these people an opportunity to get to get news in their language when it's just a matter of, being able to give them that slot. So it is doable. It is just a matter of somebody sitting somewhere and saying, no, we're not going to do it. Lastly, Kiswahili was a very minor language, and its people decided to develop it. What we see as Kiswahili today was actually a very minor language. And they did exactly what you said. To say, instead of going for the bigger languages, well-known languages, let us take this small one and develop it and promote it. Look at where Kiswahili is today. I think Tshivenda, Xitsonga, Sindebele, Siswati are such languages that we must focus on. isiZulu and isiXhosa and Sesotho are well developed now. Let us pay attention to the smaller languages in the South African context.
Well, it's definitely incredible indeed. And it sounds like what we really have to explore, especially as the media ourselves, not to also continue to play a role in the marginalization of these languages. I think another thing, just before we wrap up, another thing that was beautiful about this Muvhango series is that not only did it focus on its own language, but as it evolved, it started bringing in other minority languages. And it seems like there was almost like a holding together of minority languages to display them on that slot that we had for one language, but that could bring in other marginalized languages. That's something that we should be looking into when we do find a way to bring in and showcase a marginalized language, to bring in the other marginalized languages as well as a part of that particular display and education.
I think that is very important. It's what I would call ethnic tolerance or linguistic tolerance, which is very important in South Africa, looking at the diversity that we have in the context of languages, where we must be able to display how our languages could coexist. And I can speak my isiXhosa and somebody speak their isiZulu and somebody speak their Tshivenda, but we can still coexist because all these languages should not create an impression that we are different. We're all Africans. And the fact that I speak a different language from you does not mean we cannot coexist.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for engaging us in this conversation, Dr. Yanga Majola. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much.
That is sociolinguistic and academic manager for the Faculty of Humanities at the Tshwane University of Technology here in South Africa, Dr. Yanga Majola, speaking about the challenges that linguistic marginalization bring forth, but how media like TV can actually help to bring those languages and cultures to the forefront.